Hello. Okay, so I'm gonna I'm trying to explain a grand concept, but I'm gonna explain it in pieces, and this is gonna be a part of it. So, uh, people. A lot. If you're at all familiar with psychology, you have any form of interest in this. If you've paid attention to any discussions, then you are familiar with this idea that there are archetypes of people, and you can kind of know what people prioritize and what people think based on their archetypes. An example of archetypes is extroverts, introverts, right? And you could attribute certain behaviors to them and use that to predict, like, oh, extrovert is going to enjoy going to public places. Introvert is going to uh, behave differently in such places, in such environments, right? Those are examples of archetypes, and they are kind of like schemas by which we try to um, define certain patterns that we observe in people, right? And what I want to do is break down the archetype that is applicable to all people, with very, very small exceptions. How should I say? This is a trend that absolutely all people follow, and people that break out of it are exceptional in their sense. They are people that, you can't really capture by archetypes. There's no archetype that will be able to capture the people that lie outside of this archetype. Because they are so few, so there's no point even archetyping them. They're unique, and they are so, well, unique in their expression, right? So they're too complex to split into archetypes. So typical person, you need to understand, and if you really understand this and observe this, you will be able to understand the psychology of people with great precision. Like you will be able to read and uh, I don't know. Have you ever reflected on a conversation and be like, well, this person did this, this, and this. Why? It just doesn't make sense. I think about it and I understand why he did this. I don't understand why he did this, this, and this. Like, how does he go from here to here? That doesn't make any sense. And, we try to build our understanding to try to justify or try to make sense of why people follow such patterns so that we're able to predict them in the future. Like, okay, this type of person in this situation will do this, this, and this, given, similar environment. And a lot of the time, um, it becomes very hard to model this, and very hard to justify certain actions. And with this model, you will be able to justify basically all behavior that people do. It will come down to, how should I say, the classical archetypes that are used in psychology. They are just pathways of doing the things that I'm going to outline here. They are just means to an end. They are just ways of expression, but they're not. Yeah. So, what typical like introverted extroverted, you can split people into that, but they might be at their core trying to accomplish the same goals. I'm going to look at these goals, and if you analyze people in terms of these goals, yeah, it helps you to know, whether they're introverted or extroverted, but there's things that are going to be consistent across all archetypes that are presented in psychology. And hence I'm calling it the typical person archetype. Very creative name, very amazing name. Pay me 5 million for that. Thank you. Um, and what is it? What are things that all people want, and in what kind of framing slash categories do people think? That's kind of what I'm going to focus on. And the answer is very simple. Uh, People want to raise their value. What does that mean? I'm not talking about it from perspective of, oh my God, dating dynamics, high value, low value. No. I mean in a sense that, um, okay, why do they want to raise their value? And what value am I talking about? I'm gonna keep this vague for now, and it will kind of paint the picture itself. All people want at their core is to live, um, or even more specific, to be. People want to be. In life or death, they want to be. Uh, how to explain this in the simplest way? They want to take up the biggest amount of space they possibly can, and they want to be able to uh, leave a mark on the world, or for the duration of their, life, to be able to do the things that they want, to be themselves. Because doing things that you want is an expression of self, right? So, people just want to be, they want to exist. For example, you want to play the piano. Someone is telling you, no, do this instead. That is an attack on who you are, because your expression of self is to play the piano. To play the piano is uh, the equivalent of marking your territory upon the world. You're just marking the sound or whatever, um, a domain, right? Everyone has their different things that they want to do, but they're all fundamentally the same thing. They're ways of marking our territory, they're ways of showing that we exist and that we are alive, occupying space within reality. And when someone tells you, don't do that, I want you to do something else, they take away a degree of self expression. They're trying to override your self expression with whatever they think benefits them the most. So, for example, in case of parents, the reason why would a parent want you to not express yourself, but instead do some, how should I say, have you ever encountered this where parents want their children to live the most optimal way? I mean, if you come from a healthy kind of family, maybe you can't relate to this. I'm speaking to maybe the more unhealthy demographic here. My own personal parents are exactly like this. Um, they would want to you to live in a most optimal way, in the way that you create the biggest amount of impact that is visible to them. So, for example, there's the stereotype of Chinese parents wanting their children to become doctors. Why is that important to them? What is the strategic advantage of having a child that is a doctor? It's like, oh, look, my child has gotten something that has high social status, high social ranking, which is why they also teach their children to play the piano at the same time at a young age. um, because those things are socially in high demand. It's nothing got to do with what is better for the child. They don't care about that. They only care about the wellness of their child by the extension of how it affects their own social ranking. I have a child that is healthy, that is a doctor, and plays the piano. This is the ultimate flex for an Asian parent. Um, if your child has like, I don't know. Your child is not one of those. It's like, oh, my child is a artist. Then your social ranking might drop. And in association with that, your own ability to express yourself on the world drops because, or at least that's how people perceive it. They think that social ranking equals your ability to express yourself in the world. And partially that is true. That is actually true. If you take a very dominant position. Let's say, imagine, um, there is two versions of Asian parents, or Asian people. There's one who's all has 10 sons, and all of them are doctors and prime ministers and leaders, and one has 10 sons that all just follow their passions, and there's no trend for uh, dominance societally, right? Like, in when those two interact, who's going to have more clout? The doctor one. And because they have more clout in a collection, in an engagement with many, many other people, like, what is clout? It's basically this saying is like, he has what is more desirable, therefore, we are going to elevate him as a more competent peer than us, which means that they will have more authority, and having more authority gives you more avenues for self-expression, which basically means that they can express their opinion more and be like, oh, I think you should raise your children like this. And all of these people will be more likely to listen. They're going to be more receptive and they're going to be less combative. If there's someone who doesn't have clout, or who doesn't have respect of others, tries to tell you how to raise your children, you're gonna be like, shut up! Uh, you don't have my respect. I am going to argue with you at every step of the way. And in that sense, I will try to suppress you and uh, not allow you to express yourself. And uh, I will be an obstacle to your self expression. And this also, I need to emphasize a point of sharing ideas is also a way of marking your territory. When you express your idea and someone else copies it, that's like someone else is downloading your program. They're taking a part of your consciousness and imprinting it onto themselves, which is why it's so fulfilling to raise children, why it's so fulfilling to help people in need, why it's so helpful to give advice. That's why it's such a power trip coaching people, for example, right? There are ways of imprinting your consciousness yourself onto other people, and that makes you feel like a greater degree of self-expression. Like, there's a limited amount that you'd express yourself in isolation. There's just a limited amount. If you are, on the other hand, a president of a massive country, and one of your words um, influences millions and millions of people, the impact of your expression is going to be much greater by extension, because you have way more like-minded people or people that look up to you, right? So it all ties down like to the same thing. People want to raise their value, to express themselves. When you realize this, we can uh, proceed from there to pick up on other things. You will start to notice patterns of um, people's behavior, and if you process them through this metric of how does it becomes a question of how does this person think that this behavior accomplishes um, uh, their goal of raising their value and by extension being more expressive. If you apply that thinking, you will always find an answer, and that answer will always align with their future actions. You will be able to read them accurately as fuck. For example, there's been one of this kind of personal ones that I've been kind of paying attention to is when I'm discussing with people, why so many times you will make a very simple argument, a very simple um like or okay, there's a few angles there. So for example, you might be an expert in some field and you might have a certain degree of authority or whatever, right? And then you'll be speaking to someone who knows nothing what the fuck they're talking about, right? Um, and they will, for some reason, feel the need to challenge you. And I've thought about this. Why the fuck would someone who, even by their own admission, admits that their incompetence in an area, feels the need to challenge someone who's extremely competent in their area? Like, and I've realized that uh, their ability to challenge you makes them feel, especially in one-on-one, they will never allow themselves do the same thing in a group setting. If you are uh, perceived as the authoritative person in a group setting, they will never challenge you, but one-on-one they will. And the reason for that is, first of all, there's no cost because there's no one to observe them just getting embarrassed, which is what happens 99% of the time. And um, them like arguing with you, because there's no judge, allows them to kind of feel like they've won regardless. And even if they haven't won, and it's like a whatever, just like neutral, they don't let you win. It makes them feel as though they are your equal in that discussion. So, for example, you could take the leading, I don't know, researcher on a certain topic, and you could put him in a cage with some person who's completely uninformed, and they'll have a discussion. And for some reason, the completely uninformed person will feel the need to force or argue his perspective to the person who has tremendous amounts of insight and show to him why his perspective is valid. And to me, this is like, I like logically, this just doesn't make any sense except outside of, oh, you argued with a smart guy, it means you're also a smart guy, therefore you raised your value. Or you have boosted your self-perception, or your own value in your own internal metrics. You feel like you have more value, and you feel like you're more competent and powerful after having this discussion. While in reality, um, the exact opposite was demonstrated. Uh, like the answer might be okay. I will do like a super simple, like super retarded example. 2 plus 2 is 4, right? That might be like some objective reality. Uh, you're observing a pattern, you're observing another pattern. Like for example, I've brought this up. Like you know what? I'm gonna make the example out of the example. I've brought up this as a way of saying there are certain truths and parts of life are deterministic. Do you understand that the most common counter thesis that I hear to this is it goes something along the lines of 2 plus 2 could be 5. Like, I'm not even trolling. So many people just say, yeah, but 2 plus 2 might actually have a 1 somewhere there, therefore it could be 5. Or they don't even argue it like that. They're just like, 2 plus 2 is 4, it could be false. And it's like, bro, do you understand that the way I presented the argument is I started with a presentation of an objective truth and how it's observed, and then the people argue against like a metaphorical against an abstract concept of truth. Do you understand the level of delusion that these people have? Like the level of like why would you even argue that? The reason you would argue that is because you want to feel superior, and to feel superior or feel like a high amount of value, and to feel that you mustn't allow someone else who is dramatically smarter and better than you to exist, especially if you consider them as your peer. Like you just can't allow someone to be objectively better than you because that is relatively makes you feel like, oh, someone's better than me. They can force, they have so much power that they're able to express themselves upon the world to much greater extent than me, and that by extension means threatens my existence because they can suppress my ability to self-express, which is actually true. It's a valid concern. If you're really, 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 really stupid and you don't have any insight, and uh, you are speaking to someone who isn't such and realizes your actual value, and you're not able to con man him into believing that you're smart when you actually aren't, then um, there is no world where they actually um, change based on the ideas that you presented. Therefore, you cannot influence them. But the opposite is true. Um, if they're really, really smart and you accept that, they can have influence over you and change who you are, which kind of feels like they're overriding your ability to self-expression because your self-expression is being stupid. Um, or at least a lot of people uh, unconsciously couple it that way without realizing. And how do you tackle that? Well, in that world where any kind of desire towards intelligence is putting me at a disadvantage, I just need to abandon my desire for intelligence. And that will create a situation where now this super intelligent person and me are equal. Therefore, wow, I get to be better. And this is really dumb in a sense that yes, maybe it will be a little bit suppressive, a little bit um, unpleasant to experience your own lack of intelligence briefly, but long term, becoming more intelligent will give you more tools to act upon the world in a real way, not just some, oh, my perceived value in this local context that only is going to last for a couple of minutes or hours. Like, this is so stupid. You're trading your, um, like, this kind of thinking fails to account for the long-term projection of their ideas. If in every encounter with someone that is smarter than you just chose to feel like you are equally as smart as them and you were impenetrable, then, or you rejected their ideas or whatever, you didn't adopt them, then what's going to happen is over a long period of time, you're going to stay the same. And compared to the version of you that did confront that difference and actually try to learn and improve, that the differences between that person and you who didn't respond is going to be kind of funny because the person who did respond is going to become way more intelligent and hence become more dominant than you that isn't intelligent. Um, and will have more real ways of affecting the world. For example, someone is telling you some advice, some bodybuilder is telling you some advice for how to improve your diet or something, right? And you could be like, "Hi, not an authority to be. I'm not gonna listen to you." And it's like, okay, that is fair enough, but also you lose insight that maybe could have allowed you to more get a bigger yield from your training, and in and grow your own kind of value that you would have gotten as a result of that training. And hence, by rejecting to feel rejecting advice, you've actually hindered your progress. Okay, I've made the point. And okay, we've observed that. We've observed why people um, have such uh, reactions that seem very anti-productive. You just look at it and it's like, why the fuck would you act in this way? Like there is no other justification for it. And um, you will notice that these people become very protective and they start arguing in certain ways and they start making certain um, they start doing logical gymnastics. They start doing mental gymnastics where they bend concepts just to fit certain narratives instead of confronting reality as it is. Okay, that is the typical person. Almost all people, um, well, it comes down to how people kind of handle this. Okay, let's explain some other moments. So there's no such thing as um I mean, what else is there to explain? Um for the typical person wants to raise their value to have greater avenue of expression, and because and to do that, sometimes they take things that locally make sense, but in the long run are completely irrational and don't make any sense. And those people cannot be reasoned with. They do not have a priority of truth. They don't, and this says a lot about a person. Pay attention to how they try to raise their value. Are they trying to do so by superficial, short-term um, means? Or are they trying to actually improve their long-term ability to have an impact on the world? Those two things completely change who the person is. There is no point interacting with the first if you're the second, and there's no point interacting with the second if you're the first. These two things do not intersect. And that's all. Is there anything else to add? I kind of want to go even further onto the level of like cognitive dissonance that people go into to kind of validate things. And the examples of that I've observed is where someone is blatantly wrong and they refuse to confront that. Like it's someone that have you ever had this conversation with someone where um they are very keen to talk about ways in which you're wrong and point out all your mistakes. And the moment you confront their mistakes or inadequacies, then they completely shut down. For me, I observe this pattern extremely vividly. Why? Because I am extremely, um, have a very well-defined um, reasoning and patterns and explanations to how things are and work, and I'm very observant. And because of that, I'm able to point people to their inadequacies to such a great degree that um, talking to me is probably fairly painful because you're constantly, compared to other people that will just lie to you, you're constantly facing like a super harsh reality check about your who you are and your beliefs and your value. Because I will constantly question a lot of your values. And a lot of people, for some reason, here's how it plays out, right? I don't go attacking people's values out of nowhere for no reason, right? I'll be just doing my thing. I'll be like, blah blah blah, and I will make point A, right? And I will not even say it in a like a forced way. I'll just say, oh, I think this is dumb, right? I'll just be ranting. I'll just be casually speaking. I'm not trying to accomplish someone. I'm not trying to change their mind or anything, right? Then person B, the way they respond is, no, this is wrong, right? And because I'm such a strongly reflected person, I have a strong set of argumentation and reasoning for why it's not actually wrong. And I go to be like, well, it's not wrong because this and this. And I see when someone challenges me as an invitation. Like, to me, it's kind of fun to have these discussions. And in proving that this is not actually wrong, I end up proving that their whole worldview is wrong, in a sense, right? I'll challenge a lot of assumptions that people have. I'll challenge a lot of initial beliefs. And through that, what do they start feeling? They start feeling attacked, even though they were the ones that challenged my belief, and I'm just uh, explaining uh, or whatever the belief itself. And they feel attacked because the only reason they start feel attacked is because the arguments actually hit. If the arguments aren't hitting and the arguments are kind of dumb, then they wouldn't feel attacked to the same degree, and they wouldn't how should I say, respond so abruptly to this, right? And so what happens is they get attacked, and then they say it always goes into the same pattern of we must speak no more on this, even though they were the ones that brought this up. And interestingly enough, when I actually bring up this like double standard that they've just attacked a belief of mine, and I just went to explain it, and then they completely spiraled out of control, they get even more attacked, right? So it's like they're at this point they're already beyond any reasoning. They're completely like value conservation mode, and you will see all sorts of arguments and whatever, but they don't actually have any meaning. You can confront all of them, break them all down. This person will not change their uh, mind because accepting that they're wrong will feel like it devalues them because they have this belief that holding on to opinions makes them valuable for some reason, which is completely just doesn't make any sense, right? And we'll speak no more to this. And it's just very ironic, and I'm starting to walk into this pattern, but not just kind of often. I'm starting to walk into this pattern with great frequency. I would say like 80 or 90% of the time. It I would say this pattern is observed basically in all interactions I have with everyone, but to different extents, right? And to some degree, I would say even I'm prone to this, but I try to notice when that's the case and actually reflect and do fact checking and cross references on the topic. Um, I generally don't respond as um, personal attack or whatever. And um, I mean, is there even anything more to this? I was just showing how this like value system actually explains like certain patterns of behavior that people do. And what you'll find is like the more you have to offer insight-wise, the less people are willing to hear it. Um, which seems kind of ironic. Like the more insight you have, the to a very large amount of people. I have not met someone that was the opposite actually. So I wouldn't even say a large amount. Basically, all people um, respond in this way. And I don't know. What is that? There's nothing else to kind of add to this. That's all. There's no like special points to be made. It just is what it is. Um, you could apply this thinking to anything, literally anything. I'm not in an environment with really a lot of like social, socially typical interactions, but I'm sure it will apply there. Like, for example, someone spreading rumors. Oh, that's an attack on your value. Someone calling you out for whatever, attack on your value. Someone sharing about their life, just sharing, even if they have some like trauma or whatever. That's a way of raising your own value. Um, and if you deconstruct, everything derives back to this. I've not found any pattern of behavior that does not derive to this. All behaviors of humans come down to this. In the end, we're just animals, and as animals, all we're trying to do is just farm our perceived value points by whichever system we think is the greatest indicator of value. Unfortunately, for your average person, your greatest indicator of value is authority and social standing, not real impact on the world, and not competence, and not capability. And because of that, like the issue isn't that you see it in terms of value. The issue is that you use your um, you use this system towards uh, feeling valuable instead of actually building competencies that will truly increase your value in a real sense outside of just social politics. That is where the problem occurs. And in that sense, you could say that humanity is deeply, deeply sick. I have no other way of putting it. I just think it's a disease. I don't see any other way. Like, what else is it? It's not a quirk. It's a disease. It's not a choice. You didn't choose it. You didn't go like, oh, I just think social value is fun. Uh, you were probably conditioned since childhood, or whatever, to have adopted that view, and it's like a mass hysteria. It's like a way of people getting in packs together and just believing the most random bullshit. Like, for example, what is religion? All religions have one thing in common: existence of a god, and that god is an entity that gives humans that worship him value. So all religions are is a belief system that gives humans value, specifically ones that worship them, at least. Some religions give it to all humans, some give it to only to ones that worship them, right? And that makes you feel what? I am a worshiper of this religion, therefore my value is going up. Which is why religion is so prevalent. Anything that makes you feel like your value goes up is prevalent. You could go like, oh, how is watching shorts raising my value? Absolutely it is. You're consuming information that makes you have more context on the world, which makes you feel like you know something that you wouldn't have known and makes you feel like you're more in touch and more capable of affecting the world. For example, this is why people follow like geopolitics and politics or whatever. Those are all kind of ways of acclimatizing yourself to those topics to make yourself feel like you're a developed uh, person. Like, oh, I know politics. I have some insight into this. Well, in reality, what is your real value in the realm of politics? Zero. You're just a number. Like, you're not going to be, maybe to some extent, you might be able to slightly influence the elections in your country if they're not, like, completely fucked. But geopolitics? Are you going to influence the moves of Russia? Zero. You have zero leverage over that. Therefore, your kind of like research and building strong opinions about this are ways of circle jerking, ways of artificially boosting your value outside of raising your real leverage. And that's why those behaviors are addictive. Then you could say, oh, what about philanthropy? Also raises your value. Like, it doesn't always, again, how people reach their value is not uniform. Everyone has different conceptions of how value is raised. Um, and like philanthropy, for example, is a form of, look, it's let's say anonymous donations, because you could argue that there isn't any value there. On an individual and a personal level, yes, that will feel like you're raising your value. Look how much of a good person I am. Look how much of a flex it is that I don't even need to flex the fact that I am donating. Even that is a way of raising your value. And when you start seeing this things this way, um, it has great implications. It opens up a lot of doors. It gives you a lot of freedom and a lot of tools to understand yourself and others around you. I'm raising your value by telling you this. Once you realize this, one of the main things that changes is you begin to be able to parse things out and track them to the root of how they change your value and decide whether it's like an inherited value or that's like a real value that you want to keep. So for example, you might have a value of socially posing or whatever. I don't know. It could be anything. It could be some like farming social media clout or something, right? If you were to analyze this in terms of what value it brings and why you do that, you'll be able to parse it into components of like, oh, I get respect from this group of people, and that makes me feel this, which makes me feel more valuable. Okay. And then you could be like, how does me feeling more valuable, is that the like ultimate form of value that I want to pursue for the rest of my life? Is that the absolute highest value? And you could, make comparisons. What if I channeled this into something else? And then with that, you're able to actually not to just willpower yourself into cold showers and shit. That's retarded. That doesn't work. You're able to organically shift your desires. Like, what's the difference between people um, that need to force themselves to do certain tasks and people that genuinely want to do them? The difference is where they place their value. The people that genuinely actually enjoy doing the real tasks, they don't feel the need to uh, show off, or they don't feel the need to uh, go down trends that are, socially acceptable or whatever, go down those paths. What you'll find is those people have an interest in actual value that those activities or tasks offer them directly. They're like, I actually like working out because I see the way it affects my energy levels, and having higher energy levels makes me feel more alive, which is a form of value. If you were to think of it that way, then it's suddenly the idea of keeping your body in shape, doing like pull-ups or whatever, becomes way more appealing because you're able to directly map out how this behavior uh, maps to raising your value. And if you're not motivated and you don't want to do something, it's always a case of you not being able to see how that creates any value in your life. For example, one of the things with like nihilism, depression, or people that can't find meaning of their life. Like, what is the ideology of nihilism? It's that life doesn't have any value. Because it doesn't have any meaning, it doesn't have any value. And by doing that, you break your value system. If nothing has value, why do anything? And then that's how you get depressed. You're incapable of seeing value in actions that you do. I'm not going to break down how to actually assess it or whatever. It's just an example. Right. I think I've made the point well enough, and I don't want to make the video too long. It's already long enough. Goodbye.